10 years ago, people would laugh at this topic in this conversation, but not anymore. Esports is growing at a rapid rate, and right now being a professional gamer is something that is a totally viable career option, just like being a professional athlete. However, just like being an athlete, you can't get there overnight, and a lot of people really want to be a pro gamer without knowing the work that will go into it. Today, we're going to dive into the process and help you learn how you could actually become a pro gamer. First things first, you want to narrow yourself down to one game. And sure, there are some insanely talented players out there like Sonic, Fox, and Ninja who have competed in multiple games and dominated them while they were at it. But those players are the exception, not the rule. Most of the most successful esports players are only playing one game at a time, and while they may transition from one game to another at some point in their career, they are not trying to do too many things at once. You want to choose one game to get ridiculously good at, and then, if that game fails down the line or you want to change a pace, that is a good time to find a new game to play and focus your efforts on. But while we're on the topic of changing games, let's talk about that as well. It is important that you find a good gaming skill set and stick to it. For example, Ninja has always been good at shooters in the Battle Royale games. He started with Halo, then he moved over to H1Z1 and then PUBG, and now Fortnite. Sonic Fox is one of the best fighting game players in the world, competing in Street Fighter, Mortal Kombat, and Dragon Ball FighterZ. You see where I'm going with this? You obviously want to focus in on one game at a time, but if the time comes for you to make a transition, you should move to a game that still complements your skill set. This will give you a bit of a head start and will help you get over the learning curve of that new game a little bit faster. Next up is schedule, and this can be brutal. You need to treat your game like it's a sport and your job if you're doing it full time. Set aside time for your work. You have to work on fundamentals. You have to work on your mind, the basics, muscle memory, everything. You have to scrim. You have to do strats, pubs. You have to execute everything. You may be practicing the basics of your game against bots for thousands of hours. If you're trying to be good at like a shooter, take time to work on your aim at a target range or against bots. If you're trying to be a fighting game player, take time to work on your combos and your character movement. Then, when you go into a real match with real people, you are going to be better fitted for it. And speaking of practicing with real people, you want to be careful who you play against. You do not want to play against someone who is way better than you because they're just going to destroy you and you won't really learn anything, but you also don't want to play against people that are really bad. You don't want to get in that pub stomping mentality because that will lead to building bad habits, since obviously competitive players won't be playing that way. So generally speaking, you want to be playing against players who are slightly better or slightly worse than you. This way, you can hone in your skills and master your mechanics against similar players without getting annihilated or without getting cocky with your play. But since I mentioned getting cocky, that is something you cannot do when you're working your way up the ranks of being a pro gamer. You absolutely cannot get cocky or overconfident in yourself because there is always going to be someone better. That's how it is in life. It is. Until you're at the level of Sonic Fox or Hungry Box or Shroud, you have no reason to be cocky because there's nothing to be cocky about. There will always be better players, and there are always improvements to be made to your playstyle. So once you're at the right skill level to truly be competitive, well, what's the next step? It's kind of tricky, and it kind of depends on what game you're playing. In many games, you're going to have to find a team to play with and hopefully get noticed by an organization. But in many other games like Fortnite, PUBG, and most fighting games, you could be just fine going solo and lone wolf it out. But in team-based games like Counter-Strike, Rainbow Six, and Overwatch, you need that team. And also, generally speaking, it's better to have a good org with you to help you with funding and traveling and tournament fees because this stuff gets expensive. Also, keep in mind that not all orgs are good ones, and there are plenty of them that will hurt your brand in the long run. Be careful when you're signing a contract to an esports organization, and be sure it's a good decision for you. Do not just sign up with an org for the sake of signing. If you're a good player, a good organization will notice you. Do not get suckered into a contract that you are going to regret. And in closing, perhaps the best advice I can give you aspiring esports players is to watch the current pros and learn from their mistakes and successes on the game and off the game. Pay attention to what is working and what is not working for certain players and try to figure out how they rose to prominence. Also, learn how to recognize shifts in the industry and new games that are coming up, as it will be much easier to get a foothold in the competitive door of a new game than an old one. And also be sure you're playing the game that you enjoy. If you don't enjoy the game, you're going to be miserable. So what do you guys think? Do you have any experience in esports? What is your favorite esport to watch? Be sure to let us know in the comments. My name is Chaos. This has been another episode of Gaming Facts by Gameology, and I'll see you soon.